Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Play the Tape. I am your host, Derek J. Fields. I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Tiffaine Herring. She is the author of the book Simply De-Escalate, which is an easy to read guide about de-escalating conflict and crisis. She is not only the volunteer and an advocate for National Alliance on Mental Illness in Pitt County, our chapter here in Greenville, North Carolina. She's also the president. She is a graduate of East Carolina University. She studied in interpersonal, organizational communications, and criminal justice. My guest, Tiffaine, has worked in the criminal justice field for over 10 years with different agencies and organizations such as the Pitt County Sheriff's Office, North Carolina Department of Public Safety, and the Governor's Crime Commission. She transitioned into mental health in the mental health field in 2017, she is a consult and a training coordinator. And I'm so happy for her to be here today. Um, she is someone that I look up to. She is someone that I admire, and her story and her testimony is very powerful. And I think coming from her perspective of mental health in the field that she's in and all the different organizations and agencies that she's worked for, her perspective is just as important as someone who it hasn't worked where she is or can get the perspective of what she's seeing. So my guest today is Tiffaine Herring. Thank you for being up here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Derek.
I appreciate you being here. And like we talked off camera, um, you're my first guest. That's most of for Play the Tape. Full disclaimer for Play the Tape. We are not certified or licensed clinical therapists for mental health or drug addiction. But what Play the Tape platform is a safe place where we can come together as community for advocacy and support to help people with mental health conditions and substance use. And you are my first guest talking about the mental health side of things and coming from it from a different perspective, from a perspective of your testimony and the different things you've seen when it comes to NAMI and when it comes to CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Team, which is called QPR, which is the gatekeepers of suicide prevention, which we'll get into. If not get into this episode, we'll definitely have you coming back and explain more and get more into that as well. But I want to get your story. I definitely want to touch on your book, and I want to touch on the nonprofit organization of NAMI and what that brings to not only Pitt County, but to the country, and what is that organization mostly about. So the floor is yours. Thank you for coming up here, Tiffaine Herring. It's on you.
Sure, thanks. Um, so I kind of bring a different perspective to this. I did work in the criminal justice system for about 10 years. And I think it's kind of important to go back and kind of see how I got into that type of work. I was raised by a police officer. I was 18, everyone was, going into college, getting into these great 4-year schools. And I'm like, I don't know what in the world I want to do. And I'll just go to community college and study criminal justice because that's the family business and that's what I know. Um, and growing up, they say that having law enforcement as a parent is kind of the same as having like a pastor as a parent, right?
Right.
We always kind of we have to be a little more sneaky, but we're doing the same
Yeah.
thing, right?
Right.
But my childhood was very normal. I grew up in a great small town called Charleroi, Pennsylvania, and you know, by all intents and purposes, I mean, I had a very normal, thriving childhood. So I think that, the testimony and what I'll be sharing today just kind of goes to show that, you can be set up, for a great life and you think that you're going to be healthy, but you can have these kind of circumstances that are presented to you throughout your life that can really kind of affect you and your mental health. And I think that I just like to share my story because I just want to show how normal that is. I think
Hmm.
sometimes when we're struggling with our mental health and we're like, but wait a minute, I'm not crazy, right? This is
Right.
this is
Right.
somebody else. This is those people. But, we all have the potential, to have a mental health crisis at some point in our lives. So I studied criminal justice. I wasn't really sure exactly what I was going to do with that. I did go back for my 4-year degree because at some point working at the Pink County Detention Center, I realized that, communication and criminal justice were related more than I think a lot of people even recognized. That how we talk to people, how we communicate with people, who are incarcerated, who are or who are becoming involved with the criminal justice system, that there's a certain way that that can play out, and that the whole communication of working with those people can determine whether, that situation ends with going hands on and somebody getting hurt, or
Hmm.
somebody complying and hopefully getting them to where they need to be. So, working in the criminal justice field, I definitely saw that there was a lot of mental health concerns in that system. And working in the Pitt County Detention Center, that was one of my first jobs after getting my 2-year degree. And realizing that that was a completely different world. And not only were I seeing people who had, a lot of trauma, you know, coming into the criminal justice system, but also, um, that it was those experiences and life that kind of set them up to end up inside of the system.
Right.
So you're seeing the worst of the worst. You're seeing people who are struggling. You're seeing people who may not have ever been taught any better. They might be repeating, those generational curses. They're repeating things that they saw from their parents. So that was really an eye opener for me of just how sad the world can be and how many people are truly struggling. So, going into an environment like a jail day after day and hearing those stories, and really, knowing that just a roll of toilet paper, is a precious commodity to these people who are,
Absolutely.
behind bars, and getting their canteen, getting that letter home, all of those things that might not be so important to us is so important to them. And I always wanted to do my job well. I was there regardless of the crime to serve these individuals and help them as best as I could while I was there. So, as much as
How
I
old,
did,
how old were you when you were there at PCDC?
so that's a good question too. I actually started there when I was 23.
Mm,
And
okay.
one of the things that we know now is that the human brain isn't developed until 25, sometimes 30 years old. We're learning that we have this neuroplasticity in our brain, and our brains are constantly changing. So, to not only be fully developed as a human and to be in an environment like that, I think that really took a toll as well. So, it wasn't just the stress of that environment, but there were a lot of other things that were really lifestyle choices that I feel like were affecting me, and really led to me having a nervous breakdown on the job. Um,
Could
you
you
know,
explain? Could you explain more of that lifestyle choices? What do you mean?
yeah. And one of the things that I really preach now is something called MEDS, and I'll get
Hmm.
more into that later, but it
Okay.
stands for meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. I would say of all of those, sleep was the number one factor that was affecting me. I was still young. I was still, maybe going out on a Friday or Saturday night, having drinks, and, obviously that anxiety, as some people call it, where, you're drinking and the next day you're like, why do I feel so depressed? Oh, maybe it's because I consumed alcohol the night before. So that was a big deal, still being young and making bad choices like that, but also just sleep deprivation. And uh, in those days, we were working, and there's so many studies out there now that show just how terrible this is for the brain and the body. But we were working like 2 days of day shift, and these are 12-hour shifts. So
Mm,
2 days of day shift, 2 days off. 3 days of night shift, 2 days off, night shift, day shift. So in the same week, we were changing from night shift to a day shift. So your body is not able to adapt. Your body really needs more time in between. I mean, our bodies, circadian rhythm, we weren't
right.
necessarily meant to be up at night to begin with. Now, some people might be able to manage that better than others. I know a lot of people who said, I could stay up all night, I love it, and sleep during the day. I was not one of those people. I could wear a mask, I could put blackout curtains, I could, try to get as dark as I could in the room, but there was something about my brain that still knew that it was daytime. And so
Hmm.
that sleep deprivation really was I think that was kind of the trigger of all of the things that came after that. Um, and really just not understanding how much sleep and anxiety and depression are related. If we are sleeping too little, it can lead to depression. If we're sleeping too much, it can lead to depression. So I just think that all of that and your brain not being able to fully function well, it's going to make you struggle more throughout the day. And that was one of the things that was a big discussion with my doctor at first. Was I said, I'm just having so much anxiety throughout the day, and she said, well, how are you sleeping at night? And I said, well, I really sleep terribly. It's really hard to get a good restful night's sleep. And she told me, if you're able to get restful sleep, you will probably be more anxious, or I'm sorry, less anxious throughout the day. Now, this was years later after my anxiety and after that, my nervous breakdown on the job that kind of made me realize that. Um, because for me, um, I had to make that a priority. Um, let's just kind of talk about the beginning of um, what kind of triggered that anxiety. So I told you I was sleep deprived.
Hmm.
I was young. I was still, not eating healthy, making bad decisions when it came to alcohol. So, to go into an environment and, you have to be on your toes. You're working with people who are incarcerated, and that, all of your communication is really important. But what triggered me that day was a piece of cornbread. And I always say it's not about the cornbread.
Right.
know, I was tired. I was in school trying to finish a degree. I was stressed out. So all of these things kind of led to me just really losing it one day. Um, and hearing an inmate say, I was Rittenhour was my maiden name at the time. Officer Rittenhour, I don't have my cornbread today. And there was just something about that just pushed this button in me that just made me so angry, where I'm like, you know, seriously, F this. Like, I'm out of here. I'm
Hmm.
tired of dealing with all of these things. Like, do you realize what's going on in my life? Do you know that I'm not sleeping? Do you know that I'm trying to finish school? Do you know that I have so much on my plate? And that's the thing to keep in mind, that sometimes whenever we're triggered or somebody makes us upset, sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's not about that situation that's right in front of you. It's about something else that's boiling beneath the surface. And with that lack of sleep, I really didn't have a great diet. I was incredibly underweight. I was so thin at the time. I even kind of laugh now that I had this like pulsating head vein. I mean, you could see how stressed I was. I was wearing it on my body. um, Dark circles under my eyes that I'm 36 years old and still trying to cover them up today. But that sleep deprivation, even today, is was really challenging to kind of come back to. I knew for me, um, once I left that environment, and after having that nervous breakdown, I really had to think about, is this something that I want to continue? Is this a career that I want to stay on? And after talking to my doctor, going to therapy for the first time, I kind of had to take a step back and say, okay, for me, to have a happy life, it's not just about the money. It's not
Hmm.
just about the paycheck. It's not just about health insurance. That those things are really important. And trust me, if I'm ever in a situation where I have to work, I would work night shift. I would do those things. But after really taking a look at myself and how my brain works and how my body works, I knew that whatever I did, I had to work a day shift job. Okay. I know that Tiffany functions the best when she's sleeping at night, when she's getting at least 7 to 8 hours sleep. That's going to make me less stressed throughout the day. So when I left that job, I told myself, this is what I need. I need to be working through the day. And even if I have to take a pay cut, just that mental well being and how I'm going to feel is more rewarding, is
Right.
better than money. I also said, I really want weekends off. I worked a lot of weekends, and that was really stressful. So, you know, when I was looking at jobs in the future, I said, okay, these are things that are a requirement for me. If I have to get paid $10,000 less than I'm getting paid now, at least I know that just my overall emotional and mental well-being is going to be taken care of.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that I've really stuck to since leaving the criminal justice field was knowing that sleep and rest is very important to me, and I need to take that time to rest. I also, and this kind of goes back to childhood and really um, being a perfectionist, and not wanting to say no, not wanting to disappoint other people. But, I've really had to learn to say no. There's only so much access, right, that I can give
Hmm.
other people to me. And so, really saying yes to things that I'm passionate about and that I care about, and not feeling like I have to say yes because I just don't want to disappoint another person, because at the end of the day, I don't want to disappoint myself. That's what's important.
You had mentioned you were 23, diet, um, alcohol, these 12-hour shifts. How many hours were you working in a week or in a day or in a 3-day period? How many hours were you working at that time?
Yeah, so I mean, we did work your standard 40 hours,
Hmm.
but it 12 hours is a long shift no matter
Mm.
where you are,
Right.
especially on your feet, running around. I definitely got a lot of steps in, but it was really that schedule,
Well,
not necessarily the hours I was working, but just, that night shift and not letting my brain kind of get back online to where it needed to be after,
okay.
those days off. Because even the days off in between, am I enjoying my day off? Am I getting a quality of life if I'm really sleeping to make up for the sleep I lost so that I'm
Right.
prepared to go back to work again? Like, where am I living life in between?
And still having to do school, having to do college on
Yeah.
top of that as well. So
Yeah.
dealing with work, the work schedule, being it at night, trying to sleep during the day, trying to sleep on your days off, couple
Yeah.
that with trying to get your degree.
And packing it in, if I
Yes.
if I was working a 7 PM to a 7 AM shift and saying, "Okay, well, I got a class at 8. So now I
Hmm.
haven't slept all night. I'm going to class on campus in uniform, sitting with all these other kids looking like a cop, trying not to, like, nod off and fall asleep, you know, coming
Yeah.
go to a couple of classes, get done at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and say, "Okay, well, now I need to try to sleep a couple hours to be back out at 7 PM, but am I really going to be able to sleep because I'm going to sit here worried, okay, I get 3 hours, but what if I sleep through my alarm? What if I'm late?" Like all of those things
Right.
that really um, keep you from getting to sleep and getting rest. So all around, I was incredibly sleep deprived, and it was affecting every area and aspect of my life.
So when did the moment of clarity come for you, Tiffany, where you knew that self-care was important? When you knew, like you said, like you stated, if you had to take a job $10,000 less, because it's not about the money, or you, because you want to be fulfilled in giving back and being of service, but at the same time, you got to be of service of Tiffany.
Right.
When did that come? When did that happen?
Well, and I think so much like we dismiss young people like, "Oh, you're young, you can do it all."
Yeah.
When I really needed to be able to recognize that I wasn't well, and that's kind of why I share my story now, is because unfortunately it took that nervous breakdown on the job. It took walking out. It took telling my sergeant, "I'm done. I'm out of here. I can't work here anymore. Bye." Like grabbing my lunchbox, storming out the door, and it was embarrassing, I don't know if anybody else listening has ever had a breakdown on the job, but, especially working for the sheriff and working in an
I have.
environment like that,
Hmm.
I actually had coworkers come out to the parking lot and surround my vehicle, and they weren't allowing me to leave because of the liability, right? If I'm having an emotional breakdown, I'm having a panic attack, I can't breathe, do you want me behind the wheel? And I was so frustrated. Of course, I'm like, you guys need get away from my car, let me go. But at the end of the day, they wanted to make sure I was safe. And,
Mm-hmm.
this was a mental health crisis. This was a mental breakdown. And so, I can't stress enough how unwell I was. And, had I been paying attention to my body, had I noticed like, well, I'm like 15 pounds underweight. I'm really not eating very well. I'm not sleeping very well. I don't feel good. I was on so many different medications too. I was on medications to help me sleep. I was on medications to help with tension headaches because I was so sleep deprived. I was getting the worst headaches. I mean, just about every single day. And so, not recognizing at that time that, it's my lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
school, work, health, all of those things coming together. Like it was my lifestyle that affected me, that caused that nervous breakdown. So now, if I start noticing that I'm feeling some type of way, whether it's mental, whether it's something physical within my body, I've really had to learn to listen to myself. When I'm stressed out, I get heart palpitations. So now I know something I didn't know at 23. Like I'm just like, oh, my heart's beating really fast. That's probably normal. It's not normal, that affects my breathing. It affects my decision making. It's going to affect my choices. So now when I notice that, okay, my heart's starting to flutter a little bit, something's going on, what do I need to do? I need to take some time alone. I need to go maybe sit in my car and do some breathing exercises.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Right.
maybe I need to take a day off. Maybe I need to go out in my garden for an hour and, pick some flowers or plant some plants, really just recognizing what do I need in this moment, because I am not going to be of service to anyone else if I am not well and on my game. And so I think we need to be more aware to take that time for ourselves, because I don't think a lot of us do. And that's what leads to burnout.
During that burnout, how long did that last before you decided I need to go talk to someone, or I need to reach out to someone? How long
Yeah.
did that take? So from the burnout, the walkout for the cornbread to I need to talk to someone. Okay, now I'm learning techniques. Now I'm learning coping skills. Now I'm
Yeah.
learning about self-care and tuning in to what Tiffany needs.
Yeah. And I don't know if I would have actually gone to therapy had it not been required by my job. When
Mm,
you have a nervous breakdown on the job, typically they're going to say, we don't want you back until you've gone to the doctor and talked to someone. And so that was my first time going to therapy. And, we went all the way back. That was the first time I had heard about trauma and adverse childhood experiences. And we're going through, everything that could have happened in childhood and, you know, recognizing, okay, it's really not that, there might have been some bullying and things like that, but that's, nothing really like red flag trauma.
mhm,
And so when I started telling her, like, you just don't understand, I'm so tired. That was what I just kept kind of saying over and over. I'm tired. I'm in school. I'm working this job. It's so stressful. And from that was really when I learned that, I have these perfectionist qualities. I have the actual diagnosis she gave me was generalized anxiety disorder, that I stress and worry about just about everything all the time. And I think knowledge is power. I think just getting that diagnosis was the first time I was like, okay, I'm the type of person who maybe some people can handle all the world on their shoulders and all of these responsibilities. But for me, and how Tiffany is, her brain, how it works, that's not the case. So that was when I really, like I said, started just setting boundaries.
mm,
Boundaries are so important. This
absolutely.
is this is what I want my work schedule to be like. This is what I want my home life to be like. For so long I hated missing birthday parties and events and all of these things because I worked weekends. So, you know, in order for me to be happy, I want to be able to be there on Christmas. I want to be able to be there on Mother's Day. So, again, just even making a list, how many times I've journaled or written down like these are the things that I want and these are the things that I feel like if I have is going to make me overall well.
Hmm.
And really, setting those boundaries and just sticking to that list. I mentioned meds earlier, meditation, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes of quiet, think about think about how often a day you're actually in quiet. There's usually a computer, there's usually a phone, we're listening to music, or we hear people talking in the background. There's always noise. So, when are we ever alone with our thoughts? When are we ever alone with our breath? And so that's why I really try to carve out. I like to do 20 minutes if I have time, but even just 10 or 15 minutes a day to sit down and just listen to nothing. Listen to, you know, maybe it might even be just the ceiling fan, focus in on that ceiling fan, focus in on those birds that you hear out the window, and then pay attention to the thoughts that come in, and I get so much clarity when I'm meditating, even more so than when I'm trying to, like writing my book, for example, trying to, make notes and, okay, oh, I want to talk about listening. I want to talk about empathy. I want to talk about sometimes when you're trying so hard to make things happen, you don't get inspired. But when you actually take those times to be in silence, it's almost like inspiration comes to you. Sometimes you need to just clear your head in order for that inspiration to come in. So, meditating, as much as we think that it's doing nothing, like we have to mindfully take that time
Hmm.
to do nothing and just realizing that slowing down is going to do even more than speeding up for us. So, taking that time for ourselves, that E in med stands for exercising. Um, Even if it's just going for a walk, I do like to go to the gym. I like to take a yoga class here and there, but even if it's just getting out for 30 minutes a day and going for a walk in the sunshine, what that does for your body, and giving yourself a break, and also, moving your body is so important. A body in motion stays in motion, so we've got to make sure that we're moving our bodies and taking care of it. That the diet, um, you know, not just eating well, but, maybe not eating enough. That was one of the things when I'm stressed out, I don't like to eat. Some people really, they feel hungry all the time and they want to continue to eat. I'm the opposite. I might have to stop and consciously say, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. I'm doing too much. Like I haven't even had a bite to eat today. You know, me working in those meals, and obviously we like junk food. This is
Yes.
America. There's a lot of bad things that the drive-through is so easy to
Fast.
go through.
Yes.
But if I did go through and get that Whopper today, I need to make sure that maybe for dinner I have a salad, or it's about balance,
Right.
and you know then that S in sleep. So meditation, exercise, diet, sleep. When I really started looking at all of that and making it a priority, I think that's when life got better. I told you I was on medications for sleep. I was on medications for tension headaches. When I was able to really take a break, and I took about 2 weeks off of work, after I had that nervous breakdown. Um, 2 weeks of sleeping at night, getting back on, a normal schedule. When it was time for me to go back to work, I said, I don't think this job is going to fit my lifestyle and who I want to be and how I want to feel. I don't work, I don't have a job because I want to work all the time, right? I work because I want that job to support my life, my lifestyle outside of work. So I don't want to have something that's just going to beat me down and that I'm going to feel terrible all the time. And so that was when I made the decision, like, I need to be doing something that I love to do that feeds my soul.
Hmm.
And I did do that for a long time. But it really wasn't until I transitioned into the mental health field that I feel like I found, my passion. And I don't even think I recognized my nervous breakdown on the job as my story. It really wasn't until I got into mental health and I started talking about burnout and compassion fatigue that I realized, oh my God, I experienced that.
Right.
That is my story. Like that is what I'm up here telling, and I trained law enforcement for a really long time in crisis intervention training. And same thing, these are people who are out there helping other people solve their problems on a day-to-day basis. What about my problems? What about me? If I am not mentally well and taking care of myself, how am I going to show up on this scene and help these other people? So self-care is so important. And I should probably mention, that compassion fatigue as well.
Hmm.
That's a really big word that I don't think a lot of people know. But if you are and it's not just, in the criminal justice field, it's not just law enforcement, but it's doctors, it's nurses, it's teachers, it's anyone who's working in a profession where they're helping other people, where they're, guiding other people, teaching. And and you feel like maybe you're not getting there. You're spinning your wheels. You are working with kids who have trauma, right? Or you're working with patients who are sick, and seeing sick people, seeing people, dying or passing away, seeing people going to jail, seeing people in sometimes their darkest moments on the worst days of their lives. And then you do that over and over, and then you clear that patient or you clear that scene, and then it's on to the next,
Right. Yes.
that experience, those experiences can layer on you and layer on you to, where we start to internalize it. And then we can become depressed, and it wasn't even our own personal experiences. It was these other people's experiences that we saw and heard that kind of layer on us. And there's a saying. Oh, what is the saying? I got to think of it really quick.
While you think of it, oh, go
Yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
no, ask your question, I'll come back to it.
Okay. Um, you had mentioned I like meds, meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. Um, I believe that's another way to incorporate or include the mind, body, and soul. All three need to be taken care of, and there's a balance. With you mentioned in your book that we'll get to in a bit about how to balance the crisis and the calm.
Hmm.
And I think meds is a good way to focus on how to balance the crisis and the calm, because life happens. Life on life terms is going to happen. There's no way to get around that. But the way that we can approach it is through, like, which is one of your chapters in your book. I think it's chapter 16 is self-care. And you spoke about empathy and mind, body, and spirit. I think that's meds all day. That's the meds that we have to take, is
Yeah.
the meditation, time for self, the exercise, the diet, and the sleep. That's the mind, body, and spirit. That's the meds that
Yeah.
we should be taking. And I agree that I never heard it put that way, but it still reminds me of the mind, body, and spirit. All three have to be balanced and working together to be a productive, to be just to be a better person, a better human being,
Yeah.
and to be present. So um, I
And
think that's
I'll tell you the people who are going to be most affected by this are the people who care the most. That's what I notice. Because if you're having a mental health crisis, if you're really struggling with something, you're gonna if I'm come in to de-escalate you, you're
hmm
gonna know if I'm full of it or if I'm really there to help you.
absolutely
And it's that caring, it's that empathy, you know?
yes,
But that is also what makes me vulnerable to your pain. Because if I'm actually listening to your story and I'm actually trying to empathize, which is listening to understand, then I am going to internalize that in some way. And the quote I was trying to think of before is, working in a helping profession and expecting not to be traumatized is like expecting to walk through water and not get wet.
absolutely,
If you are going to be helping others, listening to their story, and doing your best to help them, mind, body, and soul, it is going to take a little piece of you. But it also takes that conscious effort of, okay, well, I'm glad that I was able to help Derek today. But now that this is over, I need to replenish my soul in some way.
absolutely. You have to recharge. You have
Yes.
to recharge that energy that you gave consciously and with love and with empathy to someone else dealing with a situation or crisis. then you definitely have to take time to recharge yourself, mind, body, and spirit, meds,
Yeah.
meditation, exercise, diet,
Yep.
sleep. I think that is, I'm
Yep.
so glad you said that because a lot of people miss that part. Like, I'm
Yep.
so drained. I'm so tired. Go take some time for yourself and recharge.
Yep.
Whatever that is you have to do positively, that self care for yourself,
Yeah.
take it. Take a moment to
Yeah.
recharge because, again, being in the we're in this the service business of being of service to others. That does take a piece of us, and
Yep.
for us to continuously keep that empathy, we have to take time for ourselves because I've seen it on both sides where I know when someone's giving me lip service. I
Right.
know when someone is reading off a script. I know when someone is checking the clock and they're trying to get me in and get me out. I've seen it on so many sides, on the treatment side, on the VA side, but I've also seen, like you, Tiffany, the people that care. And that's what keeps me here alive because there's people that actually care for my well-being to get past this, to get me the help that I need because they care, because they've been
Yeah.
there. And that's
Yeah.
the difference between life and death. Someone that cares. And I'm glad you mentioned that and said that. That is very important.
And that's also why it's so important that we surround ourselves with the right people too.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go back to that 23-year-old girl, I was probably hanging around some people I shouldn't have been hanging around. But now, all of my friendships, my family, like I always make sure that when I'm not on the clock, that I'm surrounding myself with these people who love me and encourage me, tell me they're
Right.
proud of me and support me. That's what it's all about. And we had talked, I think before we started recording about hope,
Mm-hmm.
and if I'm working in a profession where I'm trying to instill hope in you, at the end of the day, I also have to have that hope for myself. So
Right.
what does that look like? Maybe it's spirituality and praying and faith, but at the end of the day, you have to have faith in something. That's the whole reason why you're doing what you're doing, right? Is because you have this hope and faith in humans, in the world, in life, and whatever's happening. And that's really that's big picture thinking, right?
Right.
um
Right.
but inspiring that hope, I'm not going to be able to inspire that hope in you if I don't have that hope for myself. So I've got to be healthy, mind, body, and soul, in order to give 100% of my attention
Mm-hmm.
into helping this other person.
We got about 15, 20 minutes. I wanted to talk about your book, Simply De-Escalate, and how did that come about? And we have talked about self-care, which is chapter 16. We've talked about hope, which is chapter 15. We've talked about empathy, which is chapter 13. How did that book come about for you? And what was the process? How did it happen? How did it materialize for you?
Yeah. So I mentioned teaching crisis intervention training to law
Mm-hmm.
enforcement for a long time, and just to kind of give everyone an idea of what that training is, it's a 40-hour training
Mm-hmm.
for law enforcement where they're going to come in and learn about mental health diagnoses. They're going to learn about de-escalation. They're going to maybe go on some site visits, get to go see a group home, or get to go to some type of recovery group. It's really kind of showing them all of the services and resources that are available to them. But that de escalation component was really important. And I think when we hear that word a lot of times, it is in relation to law enforcement. But as I was, years into my career, I start thinking, why is this only taught to law enforcement?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't our medical other medical professionals? Why aren't, right, the teachers, pastors, customer service
Right.
representatives? Like,
Right.
and no matter what you do, at some point we're going to come across someone who is unhappy with us, with our service, with whatever that is. And so how do you keep those conversations under control? What are the things that we need to say or do so that it doesn't escalate, so that someone doesn't get hurt, so that they don't want to speak to the manager or file a complaint or whatever it is. So I wanted to gear the de-escalation information towards everyone in all professions. So I kind of took the law enforcement aspect out of it, and I wanted to just kind of show, because I mentioned I went to school for interpersonal and organizational communications, because I realized how important communication was in all professions. And
Right.
so I'm just
Hmm.
able that I was able, I'm just so glad that I was able to kind of tie that together, because that's really my goal right now, is to let every profession know that these skills are important, and that what you say or do can be the matter of, life or death. Sometimes it's the matter of, helping versus not helping that person. And it goes down to even just some of the smallest things that we don't think about. You mentioned earlier, going to the VA or going to some of these places and working with people that you could tell were just like looking at their clock. Well, what's it mean when someone looks at their watch? It means that they're in a hurry. It means that they're thinking about what they're doing next. They're not completely, engaged. Body language, as far as, if you and I are in the same room and I'm trying to counsel you, I probably don't want to be standing over you. I don't want to look like taller or bigger. I probably want to pull up a chair and sit next to you so that we can have a conversation.
Mm,
There's so many little things that we can do. Um, Eye contact, right? Now,
right.
some people have a hard time with eye contact, but a lot of times, looking in someone's eyes, it shows that you're engaged. It shows that you care. So even just the smallest things, and we have to keep that in mind. It's not just everything that I'm saying, but it's everything that I'm not saying, right? It's that nonverbal communication too, that actions can sometimes speak a lot louder than words.
They sure can. They sure can. Where can people um, where can people go to find your book or purchase your book?
Yeah, so I have my website, tiffanyherring.com, or it's also available on Amazon. I think that's probably the easiest way for most folks to get it. Just simply De-Escalate by Tiffany Herring on Amazon and get yourself a copy.
It's a really good read. I didn't a lot of things I didn't know as far as making a plan or giving people options, or like chapter 10,
Yeah.
practicing active listening, where you're, like you said, you're engaged because someone is there trying to share vulnerable aspects of their life, or things that they've gone through, or things that they thought about, or the trauma that they have endured. And it's important to pay attention and be in the moment, like you said. And I'm learning by doing this in my self-care, how being in the moment not only helps others, but it fulfills me too. I was one of those people that was definitely listen, next, what's next? I wasn't present. So I do practice active listening now. I practice it in all of my daily functions, with my children, with my parents, with my wife, with my friends. Uh, and That's something that I definitely didn't know about. And communicating with high conflict people.
Mhm.
That,
Yeah. And
yeah,
communication is even more important with, when someone is upset, or if they are a
yes,
high conflict person, then,
yes.
that's even more important. And, but really the human brain, our psyche, like, we're going to respond the same way. If I say to you, you just tell me which one you prefer. Derek,
Okay.
you need to go to an AA meeting, versus, hey, Derek, I know you've been going through a lot. Do you think maybe you need to go to a meeting?
I like the second one. I like
Right.
I like the second one. It was your tone, because you
Because
talk
I didn't.
about tone. Right. Go
Right,
ahead.
and
Go
I
ahead.
and I didn't tell you, right?
Right.
Derek, you need to go to a meeting, and
Right.
you're like, what? You feel judged, right?
Right.
You go,
Right.
well, what is she? As opposed to me saying, hey, I noticed you've been going through a lot lately. You seem really stressed out. Have you been going to your meetings? Do you think maybe you need to go to one now? And I'm asking you. I'm putting the
Right.
ball in your court
Right.
so that you can self reflect and say, oh, hey, you know what? I might need to make a meeting. Somebody's calling you on I'm calling
But
you on your stuff, but
right.
I'm saying it in a way
That,
that isn't making you feel, again, judged, or like
right.
I'm talking down to you.
Right.
I'm putting the ball in your court. I'm asking you that question, and asking versus telling is always going to be the best approach.
And that's what play the tape is. That's what the idea of play the tape came from. Is it's and I'm pretty sure you're well you know it. It's a treatment term. It's a AA or NA. It's a treatment term where you play the tape, and play the tape is what you just said. It's playing that tape out with love and empathy, hearing that, hey, someone is caring for me, but they're doing it in a loving way. Instead of,
Mhm.
Derek, you need to go to an NA meeting now. Derek, you're going through a lot. Um, I see you're struggling. You're thinking about going to a meeting tonight. Maybe I can come with you. Like, wow, okay. Someone not only cares enough to suggest I need to go and call me out lovingly, but they're even willing to go. What? That does
Yeah.
make you take a step back and be like, maybe I need to play this tape all the way through and see what's going on with me and reach out. So
Mhm.
I'm glad you said that.
And then that's why, and then that helps with making a plan and giving options, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you think about a little kid, right? If you go to a little kid and you say, what do you want for snack time? They're going to be like, I want ice cream. Well, and then you tell the kid they can't have ice cream,
Right.
and then you have this full blown tantrum, as opposed to going to little Timmy and saying, hey, it's snack time. Would you like some, you know, apples, or would you like some peanut butter and celery? Right.
Right.
And then they have two choices. They're not just pulling anything out of the air that you might say no to, because we did ask the question. So really, it's
Right.
just the way that you're phrasing things. Okay, I've given this child two options. Maybe they say, I want apples. Well, then I've just empowered that child to use their voice, that, they were able to make a decision, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to boost their confidence at the end of the day. So, again, people don't like to be told what they can and cannot do. They like to be able to make those choices, and they're more likely to go along with those choices if they feel like it was a choice and they weren't
Right.
told to do it.
Just like you said in chapter 11, give options, give options to other people and give options for yourself. That empowers you. I like that. Absolutely. Real quick. Well, not real quick, but I want you to, we talked about in your introduction how you're a volunteer and advocate, and you're also the president of NAMI, Pitt County National Alliance on Mental Health Illness. Explain to people what that is in a little detail, and what that nonprofit organization offers the community that is serving.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're talking about this, because I know you're probably going to have a lot of listeners from all over. So I really want them to be able to connect with a NAMI chapter if that's something that they need. NAMI does a whole lot of training and education. But one of the things that we offer here, because we are a smaller chapter in Pitt County, and I'm really excited that you're here today, because we can
Thank
talk
you.
about our new peer support group. So one of the things that NAMI offers is called NAMI Connection, and very similar to where someone experiencing substance use disorder, they might go to an AA or an NA, meeting. A NAMI Connections meeting is going to be for someone who's living with a mental health challenge, and that can be anything across the board: anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, ADHD, whatever it is. We want to give someone a safe place to be able to come and share how they're feeling. And again, not be judged, to be in that environment where you feel like you're heard. And then also, having the availability of resources in case someone does need connected to a therapist, or someone does need to go to a doctor, or just finding more information. So I'm really excited. We haven't had a peer support group here in Greenville in a number of years, so we will be holding those the second Tuesday of every month at Covenant Church in Winterville. So if there's anyone local who wants to attend, definitely follow our NAMI Pitt County Facebook page, and you can find out about those meetings. Now, what another thing that we notice a lot is that it's not just the individual who's struggling. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's their caregivers as well. It could be family members, and those family members really need support as well. So we also offer a family support group for parents, spouses, anyone who is loving for someone who's living with a mental illness, because we just talked about burnout and compassion fatigue. And if I'm taking care of my loved one, that's totally something that could happen to me as well. My
Right.
mental health becomes that much more important because I need to support my loved one's mental health. So just going to NAMI.org, punching in your zip code, finding out if there's a chapter near you, and making sure that you attend those meetings. They are so helpful, and I'm really glad that we have those locally here in Pitt County.
Right. And the peer support education group, the NAMI Connection group, is every second Tuesday of the month. What time?
It is from 6:30 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
And now, if you live in an area, because there's other than Greenville, North Carolina, where we are, the next chapter you're going to find is going to be in Wilmington and Raleigh, which is a few hours away from us. So there are a lot of rural areas in between there who unfortunately don't have NAMI chapters. But you can go again to NAMI.org. There are a lot of virtual meetings up there.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
if you can't catch an in-person meeting, you can still kind of get that fellowship and that support by joining a virtual meeting. And some people may prefer that virtual meeting. So really just finding ways to get you that support in a way that's comfortable for you. That's really what NAMI's all about.
Awesome. Awesome. That's I'm so blessed to be a part of that organization. It's like the other day we had the expo at the church, and that was just a fantastic turnout, and being able to introduce ourselves to the community that we have a chapter here in Pitt County, and especially in the African American community where therapy is frowned upon and looked down on and stigmatized. Excuse me. I'm not crazy. I'm not going to talk to anyone. I don't need to talk to anyone. And what we're trying to do here at NAMI is, of course, we're not therapists, and we're not counselors, but we do share in community and support and advocacy of, hey, you're not alone. There's people out here that love you and want to help and see you do your best. Because I'm one that suffers. I'm dual diagnosed. I have PTSD and MDD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, major depressive disorder, and I'm a recovering addict. Full transparency. I'm not hiding and I'm not shamed, but I'm living. I'm a survivor, but I'm not just surviving. I'm living and I'm being of service and I'm giving back because of organizations like NAMI, because of my fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous and the things that I like to do and be of service. So you got it. You're seeing someone right here in the flesh living it, and it can work. It can work, and we're here to help. So thank you, Tiffany, so
Yeah,
much.
amen. Thank you. And I'm so excited that you're back in Greenville and involved with NAMI. And I'm just
Me
really
too.
excited to see where our chapter is going to go because I really see it growing from here forward now that we have the connections group.
Me too. And there's a lot of different things that we're trying to do in our community to let people know that NAMI Pitt County chapter is here, and push it, that there is help and support out there on other aspects and avenues. But listen, Tiffany, I love you so much. I thank you for being up here. This
Thank
won't be your
you.
last time of being up here. Um, yeah, I really appreciate you. I really, really do.
Yeah, I appreciate you having to, and it takes a whole community to be able to be able to offer things like this and to help other people. So I love that you have this podcast and that you're getting more involved, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go from here. So thank
Me,
you.
me too. Well, listen, you be blessed. I'll
You
talk to
too.
you soon. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Derek. Bye.
Bye. Listen, we thank you so much for being here today, ladies and gentlemen. And listen, with, with with peace comes understanding, and with understanding comes love, and with love comes faith, and with faith comes hope. With hope comes recovery. And when we say recovery, we're not just talking about. We are talking about people with mental health challenges. We are talking about people with substance use, but we're talking about people just have trials and tribulations daily. That's what recovery is. Life will happen, but we get up, we recover together. Listen, there's people that love you and they are willing to jump down in that hole with you because they know the way out. If no one's told you today that they love you, we love you. I love you. So until next time, this has been Play the Tape. Peace.